Anyway, I'm Curtis Buchanan. I live in Jonesboro, Tennessee. I've made chairs, specifically Windsor chairs or Windsor type chairs for almost 40 years now for a living. I got a little shop. It's 320 square feet. It's just perfect for greenwood chair making. Power tools. I got a lathe. I've always turned on a power lathe. I've used to have a spring pole lathe. I loaned it out to somebody and never got it back, but I've turned on one of those, but not enough to where I'm good on it. After about 10 years of chair making, I added the bandsaw you see behind me over there, and that's been it. And that's all you need for greenwood chair making. The only boards I use are my seat blanks. So I get logs and just work it straight from the log, keep the logs outside and bring it in as I need it. And, lends itself to just a nice small shop. A lot of advantages to a small shop, cheap to build, cheap to keep up. You don't have to walk very far to get to anything. You have to keep it clean. If something comes down from the house, like a lamp to be fixed, you got to fix it and get back up there, which keeps my lovely wife happy. Anyway, my workbench takes up the major part of my shop. I'd worked in about 6 shops before I built mine. Built this in '92. It's a little timber frame. And I knew what I wanted. I wanted a lot of doors and windows. I got 3 doors and 320 square feet. So I can get out, if I need to. And I got 6 windows down here. And then I got clear story shed roof dormers with windows in them. So a lot of natural light. I can let the outside in all the time. I heat with a wood stove. And but I always wanted the workbench right in the middle of the shop. And I know most, I would call them conventional shops, the table saw commands the center as it has to. And then the planer takes up a lot of space too. But being as I don't have either one of them, my workbench can just take up the space. So I like being able to walk around it. I like it that I'm not up against the wall with it. And, I spend a lot of time here, a whole lot of time. And I wanted it to be a pleasant place. I wanted it to be a place that you would want to come down to just to hang out and sit in front of the fire and visit. And so that's what I built. Because way more than half of my waking hours are spent down here. And I always look forward to coming down. I've never gotten tired of the work. I love the hand tools, love the Drawknife and the shaving horse. I just keep working on it. I'll never stop. I couldn't imagine stopping. So it's just, every morning I look forward to coming down, and my wife's got to drag me up to the house to eat supper, but then my day's over with. I never come back. I never come back down. That's time we spend up at the house together. So anyway, I guess I didn't think about giving an introduction, but I did. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 of my main tools and 2 of my favorite tools, Froe and a Drawknife. And the Froe, the only tool I have that goes back into my family is my Froe, and it was my great granddad's. And the way I ended up with it is kind of interesting because nobody used a Froe in the family anymore. The Froes went out in probably the teens. My dad was born in 1923, and he knew of a Froe, and he knew of a board roof, as they called board roofs. They didn't call them shake roofs down here. They called them boards. And he knew of board roofs, but he had never used Froe before. And there was a hailstorm in the teens that destroyed all the board roofs in Western North Carolina where he lived. And they put tin on, and so that's the only thing that he ever knew. But in the late 60s, early 70s, things started disappearing from the family barn. The Civil War saddle, and by the way, it's a Union saddle. My family fought for the side that won. And but it disappeared along with shoe last and some other stuff. Dad was walking through, noticing this one day, and he saw the Froe there, and he picked it up. Unbeknownst to him, it would become one of my main tools that I use. I love picking it up and using it. So anyway, we'll go to it. We'll get started with some information. And please, if you got a question, you know, just holler it out. Eric will be able to hear it. I probably won't be able to hear it because the phone's facing him. But I'll be glad to answer as we go along. Okay. So first off, I've got a few Froes here. Here's the one I was talking about. It's big for a Froe. You know, nice big forged weld on it, and I use it for big stuff. Then I got my medium-sized Froe, you know, Mama Bear Froe here. This is just picked up at a flea market. Used to be able to pick these things up for about $20, $25, and I don't think they're very expensive. Not too big a demand for them. And here's a little one that I picked up at the flea market probably 30 years ago, and it just had a branch for a handle. And I thought, I get back to the shop, first thing I'll do is make a handle for that thing. Where you see it, still got the branch. But so the Froe is, you know, I think first you have to divide splitting into two terms, and I call splitting the log cleaving. Now I'm not sure that I think cleaving's been used for any type of splitting, but just to make it understandable, I call splitting the log cleaving. So that would be using wedges and hammers and gluts. Gluts are wooden wedges. And the Froe is riving, R-I-V-I-N-G. And a lot of you fellows know this. I know this information has become, you know, more available now in the last, at least the last 15, 20 years for sure. But so a rive is a controlled split. And you know, I like the Froe for a lot of reasons, but one is it's the only tool that can do that. In woodworking, a lot of times you can say, well, I could do that with my plane, or I could do that with my chisel or whatever. But if you want to rive something, you can only rive with a Froe. That's it. Nothing can substitute it. And it's nuanced. It's very nuanced. And I think I call the Froe kind of the Rodney Dangerfield of woodworking tools, because it truly gets no respect because people don't understand it. You know, something like a hand plane, for instance. We never forgot how to use a hand plane, but we forgot how to use a Froe. And since it looks like this caveman tool, everybody thinks, well, it just splits wood. So you see Froes made with straight sides and then just a bevel on the bottom. And that's not a Froe. That's just a funky wedge with a handle on it. You know, a Froe has a convex shape to the sides, and it has to have a convex shape in order for it to rive. And the top of the Froe is not smaller than any part of the body, and that's very important also. So it's convex as it comes around. It's always dull. Dull is Froe, of course. It's a splitting tool. It and a wedge are the only tools I know of that work better dull. So first off, you have to get the right shape on them. And to my knowledge, I think I've only seen one old Froe that wasn't made right. And I won't even say anything about the new ones, but anyway, I'm not saying that there aren't any that are made right, but there's a lot of old ones out there, and they're good. I love them. So you always hit it with a wooden mallet. This one. So when I first started using this one, it was actually in the 70s. It was before I started making chairs. My dad and I, Dad wanted to build a cabin up in the mountains and where he's from, and so he cut down a big oak tree, and he got me up there to split roof boards with it. So he split them with the wedges all the way down to where I could handle it with the Froe, and we knew to cut a forked black gum for a riving brake, and black gums a lot of times will grow right like that. So we cut one of those. I had a riving brake, and I started splitting out or riving out these shingles, but I didn't know anything about a Froe. Dad didn't know anything about a Froe. The first thing I did wrong, I did a lot of things wrong. First thing I did wrong is hit it with a metal hammer. And so I mushroomed the top over. And so I saw, well, that didn't work. And I read about in Foxfire where you use a wooden club. I thought, well, how do you make a wooden club? I didn't know how to make a wooden club. So we used a rubber dead blow after that, and that worked okay. But at any rate, we got that one fixed. But I'd just drive it in, put it in the riving brake, and pull back on it. And that's what I saw in the Foxfire. But I missed one important thing, and I thought it wasn't in the Foxfire. And years later, probably just about last year, I opened it up and started reading, and there it was. Set it right there. Turn the weak side up, put pressure on the strong side to control the run. And but that didn't hit me for some reason. But near the end of the day, my uncle, Dad's older brother, he was, Uncle Jess is probably about 15 years older, I think. So he was born in 1908. And he had been plowing down his field, and he came up because he couldn't stand staying down there and not coming up to see what we were doing. And he came up and he saw me trying to split those shingles. And he said, you know, I believe I remember that we used to turn the weak side up and put pressure on the strong side. Bingo. That is the information that you need. And if you can keep that in your brain, then you can use a Froe. But I'm going to get into splitting some wood. I've got some red oak right here. Now, some woods don't rive. Some woods split but don't rive. So walnut's a perfect example. Walnut's easy to split, but you can't rive it at all. So the long wood fibers are not strong enough. It'll jump with you so quick. If you're trying to split like a piece like that in half, and that's a big piece, you ought to be able to split that in half easy, then the run can jump with you to the weak side faster than you can react to it, and it just runs out. So on the rare occasions that I make something out of walnut's not real strong for greenwood chairs, but there are some chairs I've designed that I can use some walnut parts.
I'm sorry, but I don't understand.
You don't understand? You have a question?
I could. Yeah, I want to see if I can understand what you mean. So, like, okay, is walnut not really straight grained?
No, walnut's very straight grained.
Okay.
It's just not, you know, I mean, I used to say that the wood fibers weren't long enough for like white oak, but then Elia Bazzari, one of my fine apprentices that worked with me for years, who's much smarter and much more well-read than me, pointed out that that's not exactly what it is, that it's other issues that create that. But at any rate, white oak is so incredibly strong, and maybe the strength does, you know, I can't really explain why, because I don't know the wood technology that much. You know, I know, let me get back here where you can see me because you can still hear me. I know what happens. I know the reaction. And if I mean, walnut's not very strong anyway. It's all relative. It's stronger than pine. But it's not very heavy. It's not very strong. If you're comparing it to white oak, you know, the density of it's, I don't know, down around 0.4 or something. And white oak's maybe up around 0.6 something. So there's just a huge difference. But I don't think the density has that much to do with it either. But you just can't, you can split it easy, and you can get walnut that's very straight grain. It doesn't grow like the oaks, but you can get it to where it's straight. But you cannot control that run with a Froe. It will jump across the wood fibers really fast with you. And so on the other end of the spectrum would be white oak, which wants to follow those wood fibers no matter what. So typically it's easy to rive white oak and keep it to going just straight dead down the way the tree grew. Then you start backing up from white oak. Red oak rives okay, ash rives okay. They both split real well, and they both split better than white oak. White oak can be tenacious sometimes, trying to split a 20-inch log that's 6 foot in diameter. You can work pretty hard getting that thing in half the first time, because all those just stringy wood fibers want to hang together. And that's one reason the white oak bends so well. Those little tenacious wood fibers are so tough. But But white oak is really just a piece of cake to get it to. I mean, I've had some white oak that doesn't rive well, but that's rare. But what I've got right now is red. But you know, you take wood like maple and cherry, they split fine, and you can you can bend them fairly good, but they rive fairly poor, controlling that run. You can rive them. It's better than walnut. Walnut's way on the other extreme. So anyway, that.
Oh, thank you for answering. I found elm is the worst wood ever to split, but I'm up in New England here, and it's a bit different from down where you are.
Yeah, well, that's you know, elm is a different story because elm is interlocking grain. So that's a totally different animal. You can't split elm. You can't split interlocking grain. And but we've got elm down here. We've got I mean, we've really got everything. We're in the most diverse temperate forest in the world right here because it's where north meets south, and we've got mountains that are over 6,000 feet. So when the glaciers retreated, the flora and fauna went up. Not only did it go north, but it went up. So we've got stands of sugar maple. We've got stands of eastern white pine. Plus we have southern yellow pine. And we've got white oak, which peters out somewhere along, you know, New York somewhere, I guess. In fact, white oak down in Middle Tennessee is like king. That's where, of course, all the staves for whiskey barrels are made. It's why the distilleries are down there. There's central Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, but we have a lot of it here too. But as you go high up into the mountains, the white oak disappears. Now you'll have chestnut oak, which is a white oak, but it's not Quercus alba. You know, and then what starts popping up is northern red oak, which is what this is, which is my favorite. So we, you know, southern red is not a good wood to work. Then you can work black oak, which is a red oak also. So Tennessee has 12 different red oaks and 8 different white oaks, but a lot of them you just discount right off the bat, you know, swamp oaks and things like that. But Quercus alba and Quercus rubra, which is what this one is, are my two favorite. And Quercus rubra, of course, is all up your way. It's the best of the red oaks, and it's typically the only one that I will buy from the log yard. I have worked some black oaks, like I said before, but that's it. I won't use any cherry bark oaks or all these other red oaks. So okay. Well, so my riving brake. So if you show them the riving brake here, you know, the fork branch, the fork tree that I was telling you about is really the best because you get automatically, as it starts to spread, you get different sizes for your different size of, and you get a different distance between those branches for your different size pieces to rive. But, you know, you keep it outside and it eventually rots, and then you get another one, it eventually rots, and then you don't get one for a long time, and you build one of these, and then you just use it for a while. So this lives outside too, but it doesn't rot because the beams are heart poplar, or what's called yellow poplar, tulip wood, you know, not a true poplar, but you get the green heart. The sap rots before you get back up to the house, but the green just stays. And then the posts are black locust. So this thing can just live outside for years and years and years. And I need it to do that because, you know, when I need it, and it can't be breaking on me. And I mean, I rive all the time. So anyway, so this first, so you got the tangential plane right here, you got the radial plane right there. And, you know, I thought it was interesting where I read your little, some little blurb. I went on your website and read a little blurb about what I was going to do tonight. And the fellow writing it had said that green woodworking exploits the weakness of the wood and the strength of the wood. And it couldn't be said any better than that. That's exactly what we do. And I love working with the wood and working the way the wood wants to work. And I'm always talking about that with my apprentices or with classes that I'm teaching. And, you know, we always want to do something different. We want to make the Windsor chair out of walnut, or we want to do a bend on a chair we've designed that's a real thick piece of wood, and it's going to have this big radius on it and all this. Yeah, you can do all that stuff, but it changes everything. It changes everything. Whereas if on bending wood, if you're staying within the parameters of what the wood wants to do, you don't need any, you don't have to worry about your steam box. All you need is some steam. You don't have to worry about bending straps. You don't have to worry about all these gizmos and all these other things and all this moisture content in your steam box and all this stuff, because you're working within certain parameters that the wood likes to be worked. And as long as you stay within those, then woodworking, to me, is all fun. I start getting out of those, and I get out of there a little bit. I get out of there and I try to rein myself back in. Velda's chair gets me out of there because I bend a piece of walnut that's 7/8 thick into a pretty big radius. I have to use a car jack to bend it. It's also not my favorite chair to make. It's a pretty chair. I like the results, but making, say, a continuous armchair, which I've made hundreds and hundreds of, I never get tired of it because it's just so much fun. And you're working just with the wood and what the wood wants to do. You know, you're working green stock. Your Drawknife loves green stock. So anyway, so here is how to get off on that. I'll go all over the place. Okay, so right here we got wooden club. Dogwood's the best to make it for around here. This is a club that a guy brought me from Canada when he came down for a class. And he called it ironwood. Well, if you look, I mean, ironwood, every place has got an ironwood. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, there's an ironwood. And down here, ironwood is hornbeam. We call it blue beech, but everybody just calls it ironwood. It grows down along the creeks, and it's tough, kind of real thin bark, really muscular looking stuff. It doesn't grow very big. But dogwood has interlocking grain. So like you can make one out of hickory, and hickory's tough and all that, but hickory will start splitting with you. You know, big slabs will split off of it and all that, whereas dogwood will just keep holding together. But this is held up well. You can tell I've used it for years. I gotta make me another one. Somebody brought me a big load of boxwood the other day. So, you know, further south here, boxwoods grow bigger, but they're still pretty big up here. And somebody cut down one. I mean, boxwoods, as you know, takes forever. This was probably a 250-year-old boxwood, and so I've got some pieces this big on it, and tough stuff. So I've been planning to make me a new Froe club out of that boxwood. So kind of rule of thumb is you split in half. Now, like all rules of thumb, you can bend it, but you got to know what you're doing in order to bend it. So I'm just going to split this first, and this is probably just driving it in. You see the run's always down, all the way down to there. Well, that's because the thing's so thick and big. There's no control. You know, I might as well split that with a wedge. There's no control. The only reason I'd split it with a Froe instead of a wedge is because I got to hit the wedge with a metal hammer, and it's not too friendly. So I try to do as little of that as possible. So right there, you can see it's already way down. So the only thing I can do is just do that right there. I was getting into radial plane and tangential plane when I got off on that working with the wood thing. So there's the raise, and there's the tangent. There are a lot of differences between the two planes. You know, they shrink differently. One shrinks twice as much as the other, and then after they've reached EMC, they'll expand and shrink twice as much as the other plane. It rives a little bit differently. Bending, I've never seen any difference. Bending, a good bending wood will bend in either plane is what I see. Oh gosh, you can see the medullary rays right there.
Not sure we can see it.
Yeah, you see those medullary rays right there. You see them on this side where I just split it. They're a lot darker because they contain more moisture than any other part of the tree, and they'll lose it real fast, and then they'll become lighter, and they'll become that kind of what we call silver grain or flex than that. So let's say I can get 4 spindles out of that. That'd be Yeah, that'd probably be about right. My spindles end up usually being about 3/4 or 13/16 square, and the large bulb ends up being that. And so I might rive it out at about an inch. Now you get good riving wood, you can dial it in. If I'm needing spindle that's 3/4 and I've got something that's you know, 1 inch and 5/8 in diameter, there's no saw curve with a split. And if you've got something that rives well, you can just nail it and get you two spindles out of it. Let me just change this little Froe right here because I can show you what I want to show you with it. So you can see one advantage to the smaller Froe is the run doesn't go so far. Now, one reason the run didn't go so far is because the piece is smaller. So there's more flex going on here. So that's absorbing a lot of that pressure and not the run. But also the size of the Froe will do that too. So you don't keep hitting the Froe. You stop it right there, just below the top. And maybe you can see that the sides are pushing against the top right there, okay? Now, the whole key to this thing, you only pull a Froe, you never push it. I saw something written one day that you push it to and fro, that's why it's called a Froe. So Eric, if you bring it right over here in the camera and you put it right on the side, it's great. So Eric Canizaro is helping me out here. He's been apprenticing with me for the whole COVID period, which means we've been set. Well, I usually have a mask on with him in the shop. He works outside the shop most of the time. We're very careful, and but anyway, he's without him here, I couldn't do any of this stuff. So what I want you to see is this right here. As I pull back on the Froe, you can see, now I hope this is going to work right for me. Watch it work just backwards. That's it. Okay. You can see the part that's moving, which is the bottom part. So I've got the weak side turned up. You can see it's just barely weaker. It's a little bit smaller than the bottom right here. Okay. But as I pull on it, what's happening is this lower part is flexing, which is weakening it, which by weakening it will cause that run to come down a little bit and strengthening that. Now, the Froe does it automatically. Now, I can help it out by pulling on it and weakening it more, putting pressure on it and all that. And sometimes I have to do that to help the Froe out. But the Froe automatically does that. And the way it does it is up here, it's convex. So when you pull on this, the convex side is just rolling. No pressure is being exerted on this side until that bottom finally hits right here. And then some pressure is being exerted on it. But at that point, you've got a mechanical advantage too going on. This is way up above that and not as much pressure is being exerted here as here. But on the back side, the top is already engaged with the back part, with the lower part, and is putting pressure on it just as soon as I pull on it right there. So as I pull on it, I'm going to be monitoring that run. Now, this is a short piece right here, so it's easy. But when you're riving out, once again, use the continuous arm as an example. My continuous arm is 59.5 inches long. So, you know, I'm riving out a piece of wood that's over 5 feet. And so you've got a lot of control over that. And so one is I'm listening to the sound, which is going to be a tick, 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 tick sound if it's following the long wood fibers. It's going to be a little bit of a crack sound if it's jumping across them. So that's one. The other is visually. I can see what the crack is doing. But the first thing, and I didn't notice this for years that I was picking this up, and then I realized what was happening. I had rived so many pieces that I was feeling it in the handle before I was seeing it or hearing it. And that's one of these little nuances about the Froe. And I think Eric one day had called that tacit knowledge, which I don't know if I'd really heard that term. I think I'd heard it, but I'd never really defined it or knew exactly what it was. But maybe it does fit that word. It's a type of knowledge that's really hard to communicate and really hard to teach. The only way that you can get it is just by repetition, just doing it over and over and over again. But I can feel it through that handle. I can feel this side weaken and immediately know that, whoa, I better flip that thing over. So so I can just watch it right like that, and look at that. It's just running perfectly. It's brought it, just the Froe itself has brought it right back into the middle. And there we go. Got that right. And so we'll split another piece with you. So here we are, splitting the tangential plane here. And you can see that I tried to put it in the middle, but it jumped with me right there. And that's typical of red oak, you know, just weak jumping across those wood fibers. So I need to help this one. Now I can help it three different ways. I could put my hand in there and push on it, but I can't because there's not enough sticking out, right? So I could push pressure straight down on the Froe and then do the leverage, which is probably what I'll do. But if you can't do any of that, you can actually put pressure here and you'll strengthen this side and weaken that. Now, the best one is to put pressure here. But if I can't do that, then I'll do this right here. And let's see if I can bring that run back in. Yeah, so there we go. So it did good enough. It didn't come all the way out with me, but you can see it kind of went in there and then it came out, and it'll still make a spindle. So I saved the spindle out of it. And, but like I said, that's typical of you know, of red oak. It arrived okay, but not like the white. Let's see what else about the Froe. There's not a lot.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So as I go to use rough wood, I find some wood is ready to be rived and other wood is complicated, not ready at all. And I'm wondering, as you rive those two pieces, will you use those two pieces, or is one going to wind up in your wood stove? And you know, how do these economies make sense to you? Maybe I'm just a Yankee that wants to kind of make sure everything gets used. I'm just kind of confused. And also, I may have a slight degree of obsessive compulsive disorder where I want to use every piece of wood completely. So can you comment on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think we all want to use everything. We don't want any waste. And I guess let's drop back and look at the larger picture. When you're working with green wood, the waste is obvious and the waste is right in front of you. So this piece made it and I can get a spindle out of it, but maybe it didn't. Maybe I could have gotten a shorter spindle out of it, but if not, yes, becomes firewood. Then when I start shaving it, the pile of shavings that comes off of just the back and the spindles for one chair is huge. That's mostly air. Okay. So it's right in front of you. You're seeing it. Whereas when you're talking about conventional woodworking, and excuse me for using that term because I don't know another term to kind of use. So you just say the woodworking most people do. You start with a board, but there was a lot of waste before you got that board. The first thing that happened was the sawmill slabbed the log, unless they were sawing it a different way. Down here, the saw was circular saw. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to slab it. So that means all the bark gets cut off. Well, I heat my house and my shop with slab wood. So there's a lot of wood left on those boards. Then the next thing that's going to happen is say that saw's sawing 4/4 boards. So he's sawing the 4/4 boards at 1 1/8 inch. Circular sawmills have a blade that's 5/16 of an inch. They're taking a kerf. You're losing 25% right there at the sawmill. Then you bring it into your shop and you're running it through the planer, you're running it across the joiner, running it across the table saw, and you still end up with a pile of cutoffs that you don't know what to do with, that you're going to use it for some small project one day, but then after 10 years, you end up heating the shop with it. So I'm not sure as far as, utilizing the wood efficiently. I can't really say which way would do it. What I'm saying is that with the green wood, it's just right in front of you. You see it. You see every bit of it. So did that kind of answer your question?
It does. I guess in a specific micro instance of you riving that one board, are both pieces usable? Question mark.
Yeah, both pieces were usable out of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and most of the time. Well, let me jump out here just a second. I was riving out. So, where is my compass?
On the shaving horse there.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm building a fan back armchair right now. And I went out there to a piece, pretty much what you just saw me dealing with there, a little bit bigger. And I said, wow, I can get 2 combs out of this. So here's the comb right here. I just started carving the ears on it right there. And this is the other piece of that. But when I split it, it ran out with me. Once again, it's red oak, a little harder to control. Okay, you see where I started on this end, perfect size for it. But this one ran out. So yes, I lost that one for a comb. So I've got some short spindles I've got to make. So I can cut it right here. Won't be able to get maybe spindles right there, but back in here, I could get short spindles out of it. If I was making a comeback child's chair, something like that, then I could get a comb out of it right there. The problem with that, with green woodworking, is I don't have a comeback child's chair that I'm getting ready to make. And you can't really hold that. You can. I've got a chest freezer up at the house, and I've got a lot of wood in that chest freezer. So I can always go up and get the wood out of the chest freezer. I could always put that in the chest freezer. But that chest freezer space is limited. And so I only put like really the best stuff and what I need in there. So I wouldn't put that in there. So yeah, either that becomes some short spindles, or the whole, which half of it becomes firewood, or then I get the whole thing firewood. So anyway, but okay. Any more questions on the Froe before we move to the Drawknife?
I had a question about the Froe. Can you only use it with green wood, or is there any use for the Froe in dry wood?
Well, I mean, I don't work dry wood. Dry wood to me is firewood. Unless it's seat material. So dry wood, we'd have to divide it into 2 categories. One, say if this thing was lying outside for a year, that's dry, but you want to use it. Yeah, you could ride it because it's split stock. Okay, but most of the time when people are talking about wood that's dry, they're typically talking about wood that's been sawn. Not all the time. If it's been sawn, No. If it's been sawn, you can't do any of this stuff. It's like, here's the starting point for a project you want to do. And if you want to do it with boards and sawn wood, you go this way. And if you want to do it with green wood and your tools are down this way, you want to do it with green wood, you go this way. You cannot take a Froe and get, I mean, it's just sure, you could split it with the Froe, but it's going to be frustration. It's, the saw has no idea where those long wood fibers go. And what you're going to end up with is just going to be real questionable and frustrating. And then you stick a Drawknife into it. And not only the fact that it's dry is an issue, because you can work the dry wood to a certain point with the Drawknife, but the workability of those long wood fibers is just absolutely impossible. It's just frustration. You don't go that way. Anyway, okay. Any other questions on that?
Actually, yeah, I'm surprised what I'm learning here that I didn't expect to learn. I thought when you use a Froe on a piece of wood that the grain dictated which way you were going. And now I'm seeing that you can steer that. I'm really surprised at that. That's all, just a comment. Yeah,
that's a great point, because that gets back to what I was saying about it being the tool of no respect. If all you're doing is what a wedge would do, then there would have been no reason to invent a Froe. A wedge can do it. But I found Froes in various parts of the world. As a lot of you know, I've worked a lot in Central America and Mexico. And I've always been surprised when I've run across a riving tool. And I don't know about other parts of the world. I don't know if they're in Asia or whatever, but I bet that got some part of it. Now, one issue down there, especially in the tropics, is most of that wood is interlocking grain and won't split. So as opposed to up here, you just don't find woods like hickory and white oak in other parts of the world. I mean, we're just in an amazing location right here for green woodworking. And of course, it's why so many things were done working it that way. Fence palings were arrived out with the Froe. It's so fast. Yeah, you could just rive out hundreds in a day, and they last a lot longer. It's just like roof boards being split instead of sawn. Sawing opens up all those wood fibers to where it can absorb water, and splitting it, not only will it not absorb that water, but it has little channels for the water to run in. So as down here, you can hear people that lived in houses with roof boards in them. They said you could see the stars at night, and when it was raining, the rain wouldn't come in. And you hear that a lot now, and that's where those roof boards, those split valleys or the split grain was channeling that water. So yeah, the wood for the most part wants to split along its long wood fibers, its strength, and that's where I was saying white oak especially likes to do that. Hickory's all over the place. I've had hickory that will split just perfect or rive just perfect, and others that's cantankerous as can be. Same way as bending hickory. I get it to where it's like spaghetti, and get it to where you can't bend it at all. White oak's consistent. It's very consistent. That's why I always go for white oak. I got a red oak log this time because of some projects that Eric and I are doing where red oak lends itself just a little bit better than the white. For one, is white oak is not as stable as red, and so when I rive out some parts, it's wintertime. I've got my wood stove going. You get a clear, bright day like it was today. I bet it was 25% relative humidity in here. That's equal to 5% equilibrium moisture content. And you take a wood like white oak, you're going to start seeing checks in that tangential plane, especially over on the bark side. And it's going to check within hours. Even in the summertime, the white oak will check like that, whereas the red oak won't do it. So the red oak's much more stable. So Eric's doing some post and rung chairs right now. He's making them out of red. And what am I doing? Oh, I'm doing 3 or 4 different things. I'm doing a democratic rocker that I'm designing and going to do plans for. Fan back armchair where I could use either white oak or it. And oh yeah, I'm building Velda's rocker for a lady, and she wants it red oak with a butternut seat and the red oak painted. Red oak looks real good painted. I'm not a big fan of red oak unless it's painted, but you paint it with milk paint, and that heavy grain of the red oak, which is kind of obnoxious just by itself, just shows through that milk paint beautifully. So okay. I'll take another question on the Froe, and if not, I'll go to the Drawknife. But please, if you got one, ask it.
Thank you. That was good. I learned a lot just then.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. You know, it's I mean, sometimes I forget to tell you the obvious. I mean, like I said, you know, the Froe's been my table saw for just shy of 40 years, and you know, you forget what you learned. Even a lot of times when I'm teaching in the shop here, you know, you just forget what it is that you know about this tool. So okay, so now we go to my very favorite tool, which is the Drawknife. I love this tool. I never get tired of sitting on the shaving horse and shaving fresh split oak with the Drawknife. Our train's getting ready to come through, so you'll hear it, but that's okay. It shouldn't be too loud. We got a very busy track in town.
Just a quick, this runs till 8, is that right?
No, he said hour and a half or
okay.
Whatever.
All right, it's 7:45, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah. So, wow, took a lot of time with that Froe. Okay, so now let's go to Drawknife. So first off, explain Drawknife to you. I like old knives, and the old knives. I couldn't sleep without it. Okay, one more crossing. So the knives that I like the best were made by the thousands, and they were made at the onset of the Industrial Revolution. And it's interesting. It's where the Industrial Revolution crossed with steel hand tool woodwork. So draw knives were made just by the thousands in these foundries, and they were made by blacksmiths who they might have done other things, but they made a lot of draw knives, and they got so good at it that there'll be, in my opinion, there'll never be a point in time when practiced hands, that practice, will make draw knives. The laminations on these knives are absolutely impeccable. Every once in a while, you can pick up a small crack, but mostly you have to get these things shiny in order to see the lamination. Now, the knives that are curved like this are the ones that are laminated. The ones that are straight are tool steel the whole way. And they were more expensive knives than these curved ones. But these guys have tool steel laminated right in the back and right there. And tons of different shapes, tons of different names on them. Hardware stores like Worth have maybe Witherby make their knives for them. So they're Witherby knives, but they have the Worth name on it. So this is a Witherby right here. Barton is a great name in these draw knives. And you know, you can still pick these up. Every once in a while I look on eBay and sometimes I'll see 20 good knives on there and they're all under $50. It's just amazing. Now it's hard to see them good enough on eBay, but also the quality of the steel will vary on these old knives, which is the only downside to these guys. So I've seen a knife. I'll get this little one right up here. This is a Pexto, little 6-inch knife. I love it. It is a beauty, and it will not hold its edge if the wood is not just really green. If I'm working on some spindles that have already been dried and I'm sizing stuff and it's white oak and I'm working it, the edge will just bend right over. It won't chip because it's not hard, it's too soft, and it will just bend right over. So I can work it just on dry wood. But this one right here, this one was in god awful shape whenever I got it, and I didn't even work on it for a long time. Finally, one day I turned my attention to it, tuned it up, and it just does not go dull. It's like, you know, forged from Thor's sword or something. I don't know, but it's pretty amazing. So whereas with a modern draw knife, and you know, the control that they have and the control that they have on the steel that they're buying and all of that, I'm sure that you get consistently higher quality metal with those things. But usually the draw knives I see, they're too thick. The bevels are really long on those things, you know. So this is a really nice, just everything knife. It's the thickness here coupled with the angle of the bevel is what dictates the length of that bevel. So you know, this bevel is probably about, I'd say, running about 3/8 long, and so it's not so short as to, well, the longer it is, the easier it is to pull a long straight pull. The shorter it is, the easier it is to get into a curve. So I've got some that have little bevels on them, about 3/16, and this thickness right here is about 100 thousandths. So that's really, really thin. It's less than 100 thousandths. I don't know what that is, less than 1/8 of an inch. Am I right there? It's 120 thousandths, an eighth of an inch. I don't know. You guys, somebody there might be shaking their head going, no, it's not right. But anyway, doesn't matter. So we'll get into bevel up and bevel down draw knives too. But you know, a lot of the newer draw knives I see made are made out of real thick metal, and you put a 28-degree bevel on that, which is what I put on my draw knives, and you end up with a bevel that's longer than a 1/2 inch. And it makes for roughing out really good. It will follow and track really well, but you can't do much else with that knife. Okay, so let's get into bevel up and bevel down knives. So this is a bevel down knife right here. And the reason I call it a bevel down knife, and I don't know that they were made with this in mind or not, but a lot of us that have used them daily for all these years have come to recognize that there seems to be knives that are better to work with the bevel down and knives that are better to work with the bevel up. So the back of this knife right here is kept dead flat, and it is in line with the tangs right there. So when I use it, and I use it with the bevel down, my wrist is all about the wrist. My wrists are in a nice, comfortable position. If I try to use it bevel up, then my wrists have to go like that. Okay? Now we take this knife right here, and the back is turned this way quite heavily on this knife. You'll see them in gradients. If I try to use this one bevel down like the other one, then I've got to put my wrist like that. But bevel up, it just lays nice and flat, and ready to pull, okay? Now, sure, you could sharpen this, use it bevel down, and you could sharpen this one to use it bevel up. It just has to do with the comfort of the wrist, okay? So they get sharpened a little bit different because on this knife right here that is beveled down, I sharpen it like a chisel, straightforward. I flatten that back, I keep it perfectly flat. I put a 28-degree bevel right here, I hone it flat. You got two edges that meet. You take away as many scratches as you possibly can, and you got a sharp tool. Okay? So that's it. You can use this bevel up. Use it bevel up on end grain because it doesn't matter there. It won't dig in. But you try to use this bevel up on face grain, and that bevel will push it right down, just like using your chisel. Just the same difference. Why you would turn the chisel bevel down or why you would turn the chisel bevel up. Okay. So here, we can't have a perfectly flat back because it will dive in. It will push it in. You couldn't use it bevel up. Okay. So I heard somebody say one time, I keep the bevel flat on the back of my knife and I use it bevel up. That's impossible. It's impossible. You can't do it. He is obviously doing some sort of dubbing in the way that he's sharpening it and not realizing that. So what you do is I flatten the back, get it perfectly flat. I put a 25-degree bevel on the front right here and get it sharp. And then you need to get a little dubbing on the back, kind of a little micro bevel. But, so let me show you how I do it. There's a couple of ways to do it. So one, I could take this little stick right here, and this thing's completely wore out and been wore out for years, but I charge it with slurry off my 8,000 grit stone. So we're not the New Englanders are not the only ones that are watching their money. And so I put it down and I put extra pressure right out here, just extra pressure, because sharpening is no good if it's not repeatable. Sharpening it once and getting it sharp once doesn't work if it's not repeatable. You got to be able to resharpen and resharpen and resharpen and know exactly what the steps you're going to take to do it, and it's methodical. You know, as woodworkers that make our living doing this, we don't get paid for sharpening tools. We get paid for building chairs. Sharpening tools is just a must that we have to do. And you don't want to take any more time in it than you have to take. So you got to get it down pat to where you knock it out. What I prefer to do, this is leather right here. And once again, I charge this with whatever. I mean, that right there, you can see it's got grit from 8,000 grit stone on it. Sometimes I'll take that green stick, whatever that stuff is, and I'll rub it on it. But most of the time, my stone's out when I'm using this, and I'll just rub it on it. And so on this, you're just putting extra pressure on that edge, but you're tracking off of the back here, so it's repeatable. If you pick it up and you dub it too much, you don't know where that is. So in order to get your tool sharp, you have to raise it up past that point. And eventually, sure, you can get it sharp, but now you're looking at, you know, a 30-degree bevel, a 32-degree bevel. It's getting too hard to pull through the wood. So back to putting the 25-degree bevel on here. So my guess is I'm dubbing it 2 to 3 degrees, which is strengthening that edge. So the 28 degrees is a compromise, and most of you know this. This is basic ABCs of sharpening. Is a compromise between what the steel is able to hold and the edge hold up to, and being able to pull it through the wood. Okay, so if you get it less than that, then the edge might not be able to hold up, depending on what kind of wood you're using, what kind of, you know, what you're expecting of it. If you get it blunter than that, then it's hard to push through the wood. Okay, so that's sharpening. I'm going to move over here to the grinder in a minute and just give you a really quick view of how and then I'll come back to the stone, a really quick view of how I do this. But first, are there any questions in what I've covered already on this? Okay, let's go to so, you know, I like to use what I got. I'm always suspect of somebody trying to sell me something. I've been surprised before that it did work and it was something that I might need. But I think most of us have enough stuff in our shop to do what it is we want to do. Buying something else is not going to help, you know. Yeah, I tried to learn how to play the lap dulcimer a number of years ago. I'm not music, I can't play anything. But I had my girls, and my girls were young, and they were singing, and I thought it'd be nice if I could accompany them on something. And you know what I found myself doing is buying more books on how to play the lap dulcimer. You know, all I needed was one, but I never did learn how to play it. So that's not what I do. What am I doing? Let's see. There we go. That's it. Okay, so I do that. Now I think it's been about 12 years ago now, I had an apprentice, Andy Jack. He lives in Connecticut, Northwest Connecticut, East Canaan. Good chair maker. Anyway, I looked over one day and I was freehanding my draw knife on a wheel that I'd rigged up on the lathe, and I'd lock myself in and grind it right like that. And after years of doing it, I got pretty good, but I wasn't perfect. And I looked over and Andy had picked up a piece of scrap, and this is it, off the floor. And he had arced it right there and arced it right there, like that, cut it out and arced both of those. And there's some rare earth magnets in it right there. And you put it up right like that. And you get the angle that you want, grind it on the side of the stone because that's in the way there. Get the angle that you want. And once you get the angle you want, then you got to clamp this down because the rare earth magnets won't hold it. And you get a perfect grind on it. Simple as that. So I looked at that and I said, Andy, why didn't you tell me about that? And he said, well, you do it over there on the grinder. And I said, yeah, but I don't do it perfect like that. So I switched to that immediately. So then I take it, then it's just like, you know, it's just like sharpening your chisel. So I got this big chunk of granite many years ago. Of course, it's meant to be used on this side to where it's flat and everything else. But I found for me, I like it up here. It's useful up here. So I run through my stones. Here's my 8,000 grit stone. So I'll start out with, you know, you can go 1,200 and jump to 8,000, but I find it easier if I start out with my 800 water stone. I go to my 12, I go to my 4, and then I go to my 8. And 8's good enough for me. I seem to be able to get good work done with it. And you know, put a little water on it like that. And with 8,000, I work up a little grit with this stone here like that. This, I don't know how you pronounce that. Nagura, something like that. Let me take this one. And then I sharpen it like that. So, I mean, you can buy all the gizmos you want, but you got to have some place for them. They're going to cost you money, and they're limited like any gizmo is. They lock you in. Whereas if you learn how to grind and you learn how to hold the tool freehand on the stone, you can sharpen anything. You know, you're not limited. You don't need your jig, and your jig locks you in, and then you got to set your jig up, and I guess sometimes they're useful, but I try to stay away from most of that stuff. Okay, now I'll show you how I use the draw knife, unless we got any questions on the sharpening. Okay, good. I'll get rid of my riving brake here.
By the way, that's the first time I've ever seen a riving brake.
What'd you say?
That's the first time I've ever seen a riving brake. Never heard of them before.
Yeah, it's just for holding the piece. That's all. About anything will work. I mean, for small pieces, if I'm in the shop, I'll just kind of put it down in the vise and use it. You can pop it in the, underneath the head of the shaving horse right here, and it'll hold it. So let me get a drink of water.
Yeah, but if you're doing a lot of it, having a device like that is probably a time saver, I would guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's for a green woodworker, you have to have a riving brake. You don't want to be just, making do with something. It's one of your major tools. So let's see. So right there, so like I said, if you got one draw knife, you want something like this Witherby right here, where you got a bevel on it that's about 3/8, and that way you can rough out stuff, and you can also shape with it. I've got about 20 draw knives. I've got a problem. And I use, for roughing out, this Barton is big. It's huge. It's real thick. And I love this knife for roughing out. And then, so if I'm making spindles, I only make one chair at a time. I like to make one chair at a time. I like to keep my work fun. And it's fun whittling enough spindles for a chair, possibly 2 chairs, but certainly one. It's fun doing the turnings for one chair. It's fun carving one seat. It's fun doing the boring and putting together of one chair and finishing one chair. But I don't want to sit on the shaving horse. I like sitting on the shaving horse for 4 hours, but I don't want to sit on it for 8 hours or for 12 hours. And unlike in cabinet making, people say, well, I can build 2 just as fast as I can build 1. Well, the reason they can do that is because they're set up. And once they're set up, you might as well cut 2 pieces instead of 1. There's no setup here. So there's no advantage to any of that, which is a beautiful thing. Let's see, where are my glasses? Can't do anything without them. There's a lot of shaving horses out there. I've used a lot of them, but I like the design that Tim Manning has. Tim's got plans for this. Tim is in Portland. He was apprentice with me 10, 12 years ago or so. Great guy. And he kind of put together a few ideas about a shaving horse and put together a very, very simple design that works and doesn't have bells and whistles on it that complicate the thing, in my opinion. The shaving horse works off of a low angle wedge effect, not actually that fulcrum effect, and not that doesn't help, but it's a low angle wedge. You want this head connecting with this wood as close to top dead center as possible. You want it moving forward the least amount possible. And you got that thing with a long head on it, and you got it coming down and pinching the wood, and you're going to jerk that sucker out, and it's going to catch you in the solar plexus more times than you want. You get a low angle wedge on it like that right there, and you don't hardly have to put any pressure on it at all. And you can do whatever you want. So keeping that arc flat which is pulling the pin down, keeping the head small, keeping the piece as close to the wood, that the head is close to the piece that you're going to cut as possible, so it doesn't come forward as much and loses that low angle wedge effect. You know, I mean, it's the only compromise here. The only compromise is that this work table is at 10 degrees. If it's flat, it's just ergonomically not right. Your holding power is better if it's flat, because you're already losing off of that, because top dead center is already running back right there. But you got to make a few compromises like that. But other than that, you know. So what you want to do is find those long wood fibers, find that plane. That's the key behind workability. It's the key behind having it fun. It's the key behind the strength. It's the key behind everything. If you're cutting across those wood fibers, then you're losing a lot. So right here, the draw knife will tell me. I can just set that draw knife in there. One thing you can do is you can cut a little trough right like that, and you know that's lower than that and that. And then set your knife into it. And knife's got to be sharp to do this. You know, I mean, a dull draw knife is worth about as much as a dull chisel. So there you go. It can just, it'll find those wood fibers and just dig right in. Now I can flip it around and I can put my knife back here. Now I can make sure I didn't go downhill, because if I'm going downhill, I might not be able to tell it. So I can put my knife right there and I can pick up, say I'm just picking up a little bit of wood fibers, but it's not grabbing. It's not grabbing. And now, of course, it dives right in. Right there. Okay, there we go. Dead on it. If I want to check it, make sure, then I can run my knife along it that way, make sure I didn't go downhill there. Okay. So now I got one plane just dead with it. If the piece is curved, I mean, look at that. It goes like that. But it's following along wood fibers. You cut across that, you're going to be losing a little strength, but it's going to be negligible. But what's going to happen is the workability is going to give you a problem. It's going to start tearing out on this side, you know. And so you want to keep that. I gotta raise it up just a notch here.
So I'll ask an absurd question, may I?
Yep.
Yes.
What if you put a piece of crotchwood in that draw horse? Would you just never do that, or would you know how to handle that?
Now put a piece of what in it?
Like crotchwood or wavy.
Oh, crotchwood?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I only work straight grain.
So straight grain.
Oh yeah, straight grain. No. Figured wood is firewood for me. Oh yeah, I eat stuff. Yeah. On rare occasions, I'll buy a maple log. So most of the time curl, and y'all probably know this, most of the time curl occurs in soft maple. I think 20% of soft maple has curl in it. But I don't buy soft maple. I buy sugar, hard maple. And curl occurs in it too. I've gotten them before, more than I'd like to have had. And I've usually cut it into, bucked it into 2-foot lengths by that time. And I split it up. And boy, I had some that was fiddleback curl one time. I mean, that stuff was so close. It was amazing. And, I hated it. I don't work it. It's terrible. Not for what I do. I paint my chairs. I don't want that stuff showing. I wouldn't want it showing anyway. It takes away from the design of the chair. I want people looking at the crisp turnings and the lines of the chair, not at the wood. So, I'm appreciating the wood for its ability to function, not for its beauty. So yeah, crotchwood, no, just straight grain, nice stuff. So now I'm in the tangential plane, a little harder to cut in than the radial plane, but easier to see if you're right with the long wood fibers, because you've got the color codes. You got the difference between the early wood and the late wood. In oak, the early wood being the dark brown, that's just full of holes. And so right there, you can see it. There's the early wood right there that grew in the spring. There's the late wood right there. You can see how big those growth rings are. That's what you want in green woodworking. That's where the strength is. You get this really tight grained stuff and you've got all holes, you know, because that doesn't have any strength at all to it right there. That is just all porous, hence ring porous hardwood. That is nice, solid stuff. So if somebody's making a basket out of white oak, they're only using that ring right there. This is just brittle. It just goes away. So the faster the tree grows, the greater the difference is between the late wood and the early wood. The early wood becomes incrementally larger than the late wood becomes incrementally larger than the early wood. You get you find a white oak that's growing up at the top of its range up in New York, and maybe even throw it onto a north slope and a dry north slope or whatever, and you can get growth rings that are so fine you can't even see with the naked eye what they are. You do not want that stuff for green woodworking. You can take a spindle. Some of my spindles go down to 5/16. You could take that white oak and you could snap it right like that with one hand. You can't break these. You know, it's strength. So it's just the opposite of what the cabinet makers are looking for. You know, we're looking for fast growth, second growth stuff. And so anyway, so here we are in the tangential plane. So there I am, dead on the long wood fibers there and dead on them there. So just like cabinet making, the very first thing cabinet making is to get two sides flat and square. And if you don't, as you fellas know, it's going to haunt you the rest of your project. Here, you want to get it straight with those long wood fibers on two sides and sort of square. No, that's not a big deal, but if it's way off, then you don't want that. So now, because if you run out somewhere, it's going to catch you on this side. Okay? So if you're going downhill right here, then you're going to be going uphill on this side, and it's going to split out with you, and your piece is not going to make. And it ain't going to be fun. So then I would say if I'm going for a spindle for this Democratic rocker, armchair rocker, I'd be going for about 13/16 on the green, because you got to count for shrinkage. So I use a real cheap marking gauge, and I have a real blunt tip pin that tears. You see how it tears with me, and then I can see that tear. So when I'm cutting, like when I'm cutting over here, I don't even have to look over to the side. I can see when those fibers disappear. There they go. Now I'm right on the line there. So you see how it cut just perfect with me, because I'd prepped this side properly. Now it's not going to work. Shaving board's got to be brought down a notch. And anyway. So you heard that split off, and that's what you want. That's because a lot of wood fibers were built up there, so it just got rid of the bulk without me having to cut it. But it didn't split below the line, and enabled me just to cut right down to the line right there. So let's see. Let me get a pencil. So I know as woodworkers, we're always looking for a good pencil. And there's not too many of them made. You know, the lead falls out of them. They're made out of pressed wood and all this. About a month ago, I discovered these. Musgrave Pencil Company in Tennessee. And this is Tennessee red cedar that it's made out of. Get you some. I don't own stock in the company. 3.5 and say 7.5. And that puts my bulb right about where I want it, right there. So this would be the bottom of the spindle here. So I'll be rough shaping the tenon. The tenon ends up being half, but I'll rough it out to 5/8. Now, if you're doing this and don't have experience with it, then you can take a 5/8 wrench and just fit it on it. You know, use what you got. And now we go up to a finished 3/8 up here. So I'll be going to a green 7/16. I started in the radial plane. I mean the tangential. I always start in the radial because the radial is easier to cut in. So it's a long taper up through here. So it's the most difficult part of spindle making is creating that long continuous taper. Okay, so I've got a square section of the spindle. I've got this nice long taper running up through there and running up to, 7/16. It's kind of rectangular, isn't it? Be fine. So now I take it to an octagonal. So you want to use your gross tool as far as you can, and that's what you see with any type craft is. The gross tool scares the person, so they're moving to the finer tool too fast, and it's less fun. It causes more work, and the work is poorer. You need to get good enough with that gross tool to be able to take it right up to its point of diminishing returns. You don't know where that point is unless you've pushed the tool past that point. So the Democratic chair, one of the reasons I designed it was to take away the spoke shave, force you, because people are going to their spoke shave. They got big spoke shave. What the hell you got a big spoke shave for? That's what a Drawknife's for. Spoke shaves to take off the edges and round it. And so they're going to the spoke shave way too fast. And you hear them say, "Oh, I hate making spindles." I love making spindles. I think I've made like 40,000 spindles, and I still love whittling these things. The Drawknife's just so good. So you just the Democratic chair, I want you to take that spoke shave away and do everything with this Drawknife. And by doing so, you move that point of diminishing returns. You move it forward, and you become much better with your tool. You also move the point of sharpening, the diminishing returns of sharpening, which is not really proper to say diminishing returns of it. It forces you to sharpen your tool more. Forces me to sharpen my tool more. I'm just as lazy as anybody else when it comes to it. So there you are. There's the octagonal. Okay, now my Drawknife work's done. And at this point, I would set it to the side of the shop for, I don't know, a number of days and let it lose some of its moisture. And then I'd put it in the in my dry kiln, which I'll show you here. And then when I pull it out, I would size the tenon down here with the draw knife, but the rest of it would be taken with the spoke shave. And of course, the key to that is the closer you can get it to a perfect octagonal, the better your round's going to be, because then with the spoke shave, you would only take off, you theoretically would not cut the middle of the facet with the spoke shave. That's theoretically, you're going to cut it, of course. Anyway, but I'll show you the dry kiln real quick here. Turn it on, it's not on. So there you go. So it's got spindles in it, and it's got some arm support for the fan back armchair that I'm building. And then it's got a whole bunch of these little things in it, and some of them actually belong in there because they're wedge stock, but the other ones are not. It's my 3.5-year-old grandson that spends a lot of time in my shop, and he loves to pile stuff all in my kiln. He brings the stool up and stands on it and puts it in there. So that's what that's what the plywood's doing. Okay, so maybe if there's any questions, we can finish up with questions. Unless there's something else you want me to do, I can keep going. It doesn't matter. I thought maybe now's a good time to stop and see if anybody has anything to ask.
Yeah, I've bought your plans for the Democratic chair, and I've been trying to develop the courage to get going with it. But one question I have is in the undercarriage where you have to do turning for the, is it okay to use some kiln-dried wood, like kiln-dried maple?
Yeah, I mean, you could use it, but you're not going to be able to shape those parts with a draw knife, or you're not going to be able to shape them, effectively, efficiently, So
well, that's lathe. I'm talking about the lathe turning. Where?
Oh, you're gonna turn the parts on it.
On the undercarriage, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sure. You're going to turn the parts. You just want as straight as possible, and that's the biggest issue with using sawn lumber for any turnings is just that it might look straight, but it's whenever you rive something out or split something out like the maple, you can tell all these little nuances of grain deviation, and you just want to make sure. I mean, there's enough bulk there for strength. You just want to make sure that right down on those tenons that you've got really nice straight wood fibers. But yeah, you could use kiln dry stock there.
Okay, thank you.
So I've been alone with a sawhorse that I got from a fine woodworking plan, which is great, and one draw knife. But the draw knife has cracked handles, and I think what I'm seeing is that the iron kind of bends around the base of the wooden handle. And I've been thinking about making new handles, and I feel intimidated because it's my only draw knife. Would I kind of heat that up, straighten it out, smack off the old wooden one, turn a new one, and then redo it? Or have you ever put new handles on these things, or what do you think?
Yeah. I've put new handles on quite a few. I mean, I'd have to see the knife. As far as working the metal goes, I don't know too much about that. On those curved knives, like I was saying, the bulk of the knife is mild steel that might even be able to be worked without heating it up. But once again, I'm not a metal worker. I don't know. But as far as just replacing the handles go, the way that I've got, so those tangs are usually square tapers that go into the let me let my train go by again here. There it goes. And so how do you get that square tapered hole? What I've done is bore a hole that's about the size of the small end of that taper, maybe a little bit bigger than that, and then heat that tang up without hurting the blade. You can do that by wrapping a wet cloth around the blade, and you can heat that tang up, and you can burn it into that handle, and it'll burn a square hole into there just perfect that fits it. You know, and then you paint it over on that back side on the end. But also, you know, I've had tangs that weren't long enough. I wanted to put a bigger handle on it, and so you couldn't do that. So I just bored a hole that the whole tang went up into, and just poured epoxy down in the hole. And you know, some people might shiver at that, but once again, I go back to I make chairs, not tools, and I want something that works, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. And I've used that one with epoxy. I'll show it to you. It's right over here. There it is. You can see the shiny epoxy on the end of it there. And I didn't even turn these handles. These handles actually come off of what's called a label scraper. So the label scraper was, you've seen them. They sell them now as, you'll see them sometimes listed as scorps or other stuff, but don't buy them. They almost look like a scorp, except the blade is almost flat at the bottom, but not quite, slightly arched just a little bit. And they're very poor steel, and they're not curved enough to dig out any seat. But what those things were, those were for scraping labels off of wooden boxes that were reused and reused and reused. So there's just umpteen thousands of those things out there. And I had one lying around here somebody dropped off, and this Drawknife had crappy handles on it. And I was getting ready to throw that label scraper in the giveaway box. In fact, it was already over there. And I thought, oh, those handles are awful nice on that thing. And I pulled them off and stuck them on this knife, and they are sweet. They're sweet handles.
I've got a few questions. I'll just lay them all out and you can pick and choose.
Okay.
You said, so you never have to sharpen a Froe. It never really gets dull. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be too sharp to enter the end grain, is what I'm guessing. The other question is, the logs stored outside your shop, don't they get too dry after a while? And the last comment is, I see you have been influenced by your students, and I think that's pretty cool. You certainly have an open mind, obviously. And your teaching experience is obvious. When a question, as I was watching you tonight, when the question came up in my head, you pretty much always answered it shortly thereafter. So I learned to keep my mouth shut and listen for a while. I also love that you don't go into mass production mode. I've heard that from somebody else. 1 or 2 chairs at a time keeps it fun, avoids getting tedious. So any of those that you want to comment on, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, so let's see. So my feeble brain has already forgotten the first one.
Sorry about that.
Okay, sharpening the Froe. Right. All the Froe has to do is be able to enter that end grain. It just needs to be sharp enough to enter the end grain. That is it. And it's got to be pretty daggone dull to not be able to okay. And so if it gets to where it can't do that, just take a file. Froes are soft metal. Just take a file and file on it a little bit until it enters it. That's it. Oh yeah, the next one is, of course, really that is the quintessential question that is posed to green woodworkers, and it is a good question, and it's the major question. How do you keep this wood? How do you keep it? You know, I mean, we're so used to, I mean, as woodworkers and cabinet makers, not me anymore, but I was back in the late 70s and early 80s. You had boards, you know, so So you stored these boards and you just made sure they were stacked right. And as long as you kept them in your shop, that was fine. But now you got this stuff that's green and you want to keep it green. So the wood in a log will not dry. It will rot. You don't want it to rot either. You keep it from rotting by splitting it up, but then it dries. So you got a problem. And there's no answer to it. There's no answer to it. When I was, and then you got powder post beetles that get into it and eat it up, and other fungi that start to work on. I was teaching at Peter Korn's school 15 years ago up in Maine, and we had a white oak that Pete Galbert was assisting me, and Pete had brought it from New York. It's when he lived in New York. And we split that thing open, and within seconds, these little, really dark blue, almost black dots started showing up on this white oak. And there was a wood technologist taking the class, Terry Kelly, who lives in Presque Isle, Maine. He makes chairs. And he looked at it and he called off what spore that was. And he said, they're attacking that wood already, starting to break it down. I was just stunned. I went, oh my God. He goes, yeah, they know it's here. It's in the air. So everything's trying to break that wood down. Everything's trying to make it rot. And as long as there's a high moisture content, so wood needs 28 to 30% moisture content in order for the fungi that causes rot to be able to create rot. So dry rot, as y'all probably know, is a total misnomer. What dry rot means is there's been intermittent water. You might see it when it's dry, but wood can't rot if it's dry. The fungi is dormant unless it's on up around high 20s to 30%, and 30% is fiber saturation. So wood doesn't go over that unless it's got. You can go on into this, and unless it's got a bacteria called what is that stuff called?
Clostridium.
Clostridium. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
It's called Clostridium. It causes green shank. It causes the oak to smell bad. It causes logs to sink in the river and all kinds of stuff. You can read about it, Clostridium. Pretty amazing when you read about it. You go, oh, so that's what's going on with this stuff. So yeah, what do you do? Back when I was in full production for years, I cranked out a chair a week. That was my production. I took orders. I worked to orders. My girls were small. Then they were in school. I had nothing bothering me. I was in the shop, 8 hours a day, and I knew exactly what I could get done. And at the end of the year, I had 50 chairs. I could go through logs. So logs usually stay good with me just outside the shop. I'd go out there and split out stuff as I needed it. But then started teaching more. I don't work like that anymore. I'm 68 now, and I've given myself. I still love it. I love to come down here, but I used to come down at 7. Now I changed it to 8 when I was 60. That was my birthday present. And now this morning I got down here at 9, and that's typical in the wintertime. So I just don't get the chairs made like that. And so what do I do with this wood? Well, with this log, Eric's here and he's cranking out some stuff. It's wintertime. The log will hold very well up until maybe April here, and then you'll start losing the sapwood. You can probably still use the heartwood until powder post beetles start getting into it, which might on be into May or June. Okay, so I try not to get a log right in the middle of the summertime. I try to have enough stuff to last me. If I run across like a really pristine white oak, I mean that you're arriving the stock looks like it's sawn. It couldn't be straighter if it was sawn, and it bends beautifully and works beautifully. That stuff will go in the freezer, and I've got a freezer full of it right now. Plus, I've got some really sweet hickory up in the freezer. My sugar maple, I'll get in, and now sugar maple will rot with you fast. It goes as fast. I mean, hickory, sugar maple, the only thing rotting faster than that is poplar, or the sapwood poplar. But sugar maple will go. Sugar maple, shoot, you can have sugar maple down here in the summertime, and if it's been cut for a month in the middle of July, the smell might change. You split it open, and all of a sudden you get a sour smell instead of that sweet smell, and you know that fungi started to work on it. And pretty soon, you don't even have a delineation of a sap line out there, but there is one. And you'll see that fungi will work on that, and that'll turn a little bit blue. You need to stay away from that. That's weak, and we're pushing that wood to strengthen that wood too far to use anything like that. So I usually will split up my sugar maple and round it down. So that means that, and it's stored outside, so it's going to go down to about 15 to 18%, reaching EMC, which is okay to turn. I prefer to turn up around 20 or 25, a lot more fun like that. But you've got to, balance that against keeping your maple. And so I'll usually round it down big and just leave it in the shed, and then go get it whenever I need it to turn it. So depends on at what time during its life I turn it. It depends on what moisture content it is. But I don't keep it in the shop because in the wintertime, it'll go down below 10. And that's really, you get sugar maple at 8%. It's not fun to turn for me. Yeah. So did that give you good enough information on that?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I like the fact that you're influenced by your students. I did some instructing in a couple of different fields, and it's so tempting to become fixed as you're the authority, and that's not a great mindset. That you can always learn from your students. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, there is no doubt about it. If I hadn't started teaching, and I almost didn't, it was 86, and a guy came to me and just begged me to teach me how to make a chair, and I didn't know if I wanted to do this or not, and I did, and I've enjoyed it. I enjoy being in the shop by myself making chairs more. I really enjoy my apprentices like Eric, Tim Manny, Ailey Bazzari, Andy Jack. Those are the four main ones. Those are the guys that have spent a lot of time with me. I love the camaraderie with them. I've learned so much from them. But my classes, those are good too. I don't, during COVID, I've canceled everything, and I'm not going to teach this year. I'm not going to mess with it. But I wouldn't know. I mean, I would hate to think of what kind of woodworker I'd be, what kind of chair maker if I hadn't have taught. There's just so much information that comes from it, and not only information, but also you really have to back up what you're saying. You can't get by with just throwing stuff out, and we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of we heard something, so we throw it out and we say it. And I'll never forget, I was giving a seminar to a woodworking club down here years ago, and Tennessee Eastman Chemical Corporation is only 30 miles from here. In fact, it's the town where I'm from, Kingsport, Tennessee. And Eastman employs 15,000 people, and they're the ones that invented PET plastic, the milk jugs. They invented aliphatic resin glue. They invented cyanoacrylate glue. And so you got all these chemists, and they're members of the woodworking club. And so I'm sitting up there talking, and I happen to say something about aliphatic resin glue, Yalla Carpenter's glue. I don't know, maybe, I even forget what it was. Maybe somebody said it to me and I just took it as gospel, and I just said it right off and everything. And some nice, very meek engineer kind of raised his hand in the back and said, excuse me, but that's not exactly true. And I went, oh Lord, I said, please stand up and straighten us all out on it. And, I never forgot that. And it's like, Lord have mercy, if you don't really know what you're talking about, then qualify it. Say, somebody told me this, and maybe it's true. But yeah, there's just so much that you can learn and from teaching. It's just been great. So I'm glad you, I'm glad you picked that up from me, because I think it's real important that we keep completely open.
Yeah, I was a flight instructor for a bit, and one of the things they said was the best way to learn something is to teach it. which sounds so counterintuitive.
Oh,
but
yeah,
boy,
yeah. Well, it forces you to back it up. It forces you to understand what you're saying. And sometimes you realize that maybe what you're saying or what you're doing could be done a better way. You might even realize that yourself as you're trying to teach it, or somebody pointing it out. You know, so yeah, there's just all kinds of ways to learn when you're teaching. But and it's also been a great way. You know, I remember y'all had a nice little tribute to Phil Lowe that read on your website, and I only met Phil once. But when I was trying to be a cabinet maker in 80 and 81, I was reading Phil's articles, and of course, even at that time, Phil was this icon. And years later, when I was teaching, I taught some classes at North Bennett Street School. And there was one of them, Pete Galbert, again, was my assistant there at North Bennett Street. And it's a 2-week class, so we had the weekend off. And we drove up to Beverly and drove to Phil's shop. And he was just so nice in showing us around. And I forget what project he was working on. He was doing something that wasn't like some fine piece of furniture. And I happened to kind of question it. And he looked at me and he said, I make whatever I need to make that pays the bills. And I just thought, wow, how great. He's so unpretentious. I mean, you know, this guy, one of the finest, you know, period furniture makers in the world. And he's saying, hey, if I don't have work, I'm building a highboy. I'm going to build somebody a set of sawhorses, you know. I don't have any pride with that. I just loved that. I thought that was great. You know? So the teaching has enabled me to stay in my shop, and you know, and then and I mean, things change. And before it was making chairs, and then I kind of evolved into teaching for various reasons. And then of course, just when you're feeling comfortable and you know, oh boy, this is easy. All these people paying me all this money to come and listen to me talk. Then COVID hits, and okay, you know, somebody throws a kink in the whole situation. And now you've got to figure it out again. So, you know, the plan sales go up. I'm starting to sell spoons. Alias started teaching online. I started doing that with him. So you piece it together. You piece it together again. And if you're going to do this for a living, you've just got to be resilient, and you've got to be willing to do all kinds of stuff. You've got to love working for yourself that much, because you're right on the edge all the time. You know, you fellas might be reading about people like Phil Lowe all the time, like me, and you think, wow, he's so established and people banging down his door. Well, yes and no. You know, even somebody like him was always running probably on the edge of making a living at it, but he did it, you know.
Well, most of us, if I could guess, are retired. And I guess, like, the guy in charge of it, our editor-in-chief, and myself and a couple others are of working age that could start a business, but I don't think that's the bulk of us. Am I wrong there, guys?
most of the guild is retired, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool how you, well, first of all, I loved that presentation. I'm kind of new to the group, and sometimes I don't have any idea of what people are talking about, because it's kind of like a special kind of subset. But like this green woodworking stuff to me is like, that's home base. I want to know how to do this. And I have a very simple, kind of boring, uninteresting question, which is about Froes. I think my Froe is flat on one side and beveled on the other, like a Japanese cooking knife. And it sounded during the presentation that maybe you say they should be dually convex. Can you reiterate that, just so I make sure I understand?
Yeah, I mean, all my Froes are a convex taper on, you know, coming from both sides. I mean, I never thought about one being flat on one side with a convex taper on the other side. I never considered that. It might work if the flat side was turned down against the large. I don't know. You know, I don't know that one. But back to your other comment about green woodworking. You know, I've always viewed green woodworking, or maybe not always, but once I got into it a bit, as being really foundation woodworking, because it forces you to learn the material. You know, you have to know the structure of this material, these planes, the shrinkage rates. You know, all of this is really, really important, and cabinet makers know this stuff to more or less. You know, you typically don't find somebody that knows it to the extent that a green woodworker does, because we have to know it. And but by knowing it, it's going to enable you to make better pieces, because you understand your material better. And you know, and not understanding your material and how the material is going to move, how the material is going to react, how it's going to be different if it's sawn this way or sawn that way. I remember Galbert one time when he was assisting me, he made a great comment. He said it's like a surgeon operating, but he forgot to take the anatomy class. He's really good at cutting and sewing you up, but he doesn't know what's in there, you know, doesn't know the material. And I thought that was so good. So anyway, but I appreciate you fellas having me, giving me the opportunity to talk to you.
I got one last question about improving joinery by having one wood wet and the other dry, and I wonder whether you can say a few words on that. Do you count on fitting your pieces together where one is bone dry and the other is sort of wet, or? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, typically that's called wet dry joinery, and that's kind of a misnomer. It's really dryer joinery. So I think over the years, with a lot of us working at this so much and running tests on it, we've realized, let me let the train go by you. Like I said, it's a busy track. It's busy tonight, that's for sure. We've seen that what really is optimal is to have the tenons at 5% and having the mortises at about 15, so not green. And we achieved that pretty easy here, because I mean 15 to 18. So that's just EMC here. That's equilibrium moisture content. So the relative humidity typically around here averages about 75%. And 75% is equal to 15, 16% EMC. 50% is equal to about 10 or so, thereabout. And all wood's about the same there. And then 25% is down around 5, and that's anything below that is hard to get and impossible to measure. But I don't really measure it anyway. So you take this air dried piece, and that's what you're going to bore your mortise into. And then you're going to turn your tenon out of that, but the tenon goes into lock bolt count for however long, 48 hours or whatever. And it's what we call super dry. And you put it together just as soon as you bring it out, because if it's in July on a rainy day, it'll swell 10 thousandths in an hour or two, and you won't even be able to get it in the hole. Now, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't mess with any of this stuff with rectangular mortise and tenon joints, cabinet maker joints, because you've got good glue surfaces there. And what I think you want to pay more attention to would be just the same moisture content. And down at whatever you're working at, 9% or whatever it is, and you're getting a good fit there. But as green woodworkers, we're mostly using round joints, and those are very poor glue surfaces. You just have a little bit of face grain right over there on the edge. You got all this end grain. So you got to use something else to help hold it together. And this so-called wet dry joint's been used. I mean, the ladderback chair making families around here in the Southern Appalachians still do this. There's still the Newberries, there's the Yarboroughs, there's the Woodies that are still making chairs. Some of these are going on the 8th generation of making them, and they've never bought a bottle of glue in their life, and their chairs hold up. And they've always had, and they can't even tell you what the moisture content is. Usually most of them can't, but they know that they dry those rungs by the fire, and they leave the post outside, and they pound it together. So they're usually running like, you know, tenons that are much larger. My tenons are about the same size. I have to hit them to get them in, but I'm not rearing back with a sledge and smacking them. No. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it. So thanks for joining us. That was great.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So good. If I was in your town, could I come visit and you could show me how to make a chair?
Well, you can come visit. I don't know that we have time to make a chair.